This podcast may contain disturbing content for some listeners. It's intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. This is True Crime XS.
Next matter, page 17, line.
Robert Plimpton of Troutdale in court Wednesday to face murder, rape, and sex abuse charges. This virtual hearing is long overdue, to say the least.
Just really happy that there's some closure. I wish it could have happened when my folks were alive, and that would have been, wonderful.
As Susan Prater just alluded to, a lot has happened in the more than 4 decades since her sister, Barbara Mae Tucker, was killed at the young age of 19.
She had a mind of her own. She was going to go places. She was planning to get a degree in business at the college.
Barbara was last seen on January 15th, 1980. Witnesses say she was running onto Northeast Kane from the woods on the west side of the Mount Hood Community College campus, where she went to school. Witnesses remember seeing her either waving at somebody or trying to get people's attention, but nobody stopped. Another witness saw a man come out of those same woods and lead Barbara back to campus. Her body was found the next day. She had been sexually assaulted and beaten to death.
The community was gripped in fear as to who was the suspect, what happened, why. A lot of unknown questions. Gresham, for all intents and purposes, was a quiet town.
Detective Aaron Turnage of the Gresham Police Department took on the cold case homicide in 2015 after years of police work yielded no suspect. Turnage promised Barbara's family he'd track down the killer.
Every victim, especially dead victims, deceased victims, murder victims, need a voice.
Turnage says evidence from the crime scene, coupled with modern advances in DNA technology and DNA ancestry databases, along with research and analysis by Parabon Nanolabs, led to a DNA profile match.
We executed a traffic stop. Mr. Plimpton was taken into custody of that incident. He was polite. He was cooperative with law enforcement.
That was Tuesday morning.
The case is especially assigned.
This was Wednesday afternoon. A husband and father in court for allegedly killing a teen girl 41 years ago.
He got to live so much of his life after that. I feel sorry for any family he might have, but he took somebody from us.
In Portland.
So,
Mike Benner for KGW News.
The Little Zion Doe case bothered me because I don't like for kids to sit there without a name. I go through NamUs sometimes, and I'm just looking for kids' cases to see if I can do anything about them.
Right. And so you're right, they named the unidentified little boy, they dubbed him John Little Zion Doe. And he didn't have to have that moniker for very long because he was identified.
Yeah, and I was actually sort of surprised at how this all went down because, well, first of all, I felt like if they made another announcement, they weren't going to make the same mistakes they made with the misidentification in the first place.
They were able to continue forward. And ultimately what happened was it was a friend of the family. I'm pretty sure that the misidentification, at least, it made national news. So in part, that's part of the reason why it got so big so fast, was because It was so crazy that the little boy had been misidentified. A friend of the family in San Jose, California, I don't believe that person has been identified. She realized, she saw the news coverage of the little boy that was found and then the misidentification, and she thought that the digital rendering of the little boy that was found looked like a little boy she knew named Liam Husted. And she realized that she had not seen Liam or his mother, Samantha Moreno Rodriguez, in a while. It had been a couple weeks. And I guess she probably thought about it, and then she decided to contact police. And from her tip, they were able to start piecing the puzzle together as far as getting John Little Zion Doe identified, and he did end up being Liam Husted. And the story with that was that Liam and his mom were last seen in San Jose, California on May 24th. And then investigators were able to, I assume they used like the CCTVs that are on highways and I guess just everywhere now, they must have license plate readers, I guess.
You go through a bunch of booths coming in and going out of Southern California. Mm-hmm. Where it's similar to like a toll situation, although that's not necessarily literally what it is. There was one I went through going out there over just a little over a year ago, and I never could figure out exactly what the booth was for. But on both sides of the highway, there were essentially, it looked like toll booths. They didn't ask us for anything. And I noticed they had license plate readers above them.
Yeah, see, I don't ever notice things like that.
And then, they found him in Laguna Beach. So I assumed it was, like you said, CCTV of some kind.
Well, they placed them, so they were able to track her car and they placed them in the area of Laguna Beach. And that was on the last day they were seen in San Jose, May 24th. And then on the afternoon of May 26th, before their vehicle was in the area of Victorville, California, that same day. Wait a minute.
Wait, no. So they start out in Santa Fe, and then they end up and that's on the 24th. So on the 26th, they see them in Laguna Beach, and then later in the day of the 26th, they see them in Victorville.
Right. So they were traveling. They left home. They went to Laguna Beach. They headed to Victorville, and then the vehicle was caught traveling. I say caught, but it was seen to be traveling on I-70 near Grand Junction, Colorado on May 29th. And that was right before the last known sighting of Samantha Moreno Rodriguez when she checked into a Denver area hotel on the 31st of May. And she checked in. I've read a couple of accounts that she checked in by herself. So she had left a note for Liam's father, or perhaps a message for him. I'm not actually sure how it was transmitted, but I believe it might have been, text or voicemail. And she said, "I'm sorry that I have to do it this way." And the implication was that she was leaving him and that she was taking Liam with her to go. They were going to go get a new house and live elsewhere. So he did contact police on June 1st. So they would have been gone for a little over a week at that point. So he contacted police, and he actually wasn't seeking, to cause any problems. He just wanted to alert the authorities to the fact that he hadn't heard from his son's mother and his son in a week, and he wasn't sure what was going on. And so after the family friend came forward and said, "I believe this could be Liam Husted," the investigators from Las Vegas, they went to San Jose and they were able to confirm through DNA. They got the little boy's pillow and blanket, and they confirmed that it was in fact Liam that had been found. He was 7 years old. They did the press conference on Monday afternoon. They had announced that Liam had been identified, and they issued a nationwide arrest warrant for open murder for his mother, Samantha Moreno Rodriguez. She was actually arrested in the early morning hours of Tuesday, so she wasn't wanted for very long.
It's less than 24 hours, really.
Right. Well, they did say that she was with somebody when she was arrested.
Yeah, that struck me as a little odd.
But they didn't think that person had anything to do with the case.
Yeah, I think he was I don't know this for sure, but I think he was a local.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think he was local to Colorado. It's like she was headed to him.
So we have some sort of, I guess, like sleuthing around. For one thing, Liam's father is not considered a suspect at all. It's believed that he had no knowledge of what was happening and that he trusted that his son was safe with his mother.
Her. Yeah.
There was no indication of any sort of abuse or anything that would cause alarm for her to have left with the child, except the fact, of course, that she was leaving her son's father, but I don't know what kind of problems they might have had. But so what do you think happened here?
Well, so this is one of those things where, first of all, one of the things I've learned from you is whenever we come across these types of cases where it's, I think it's really anyone under the age of about 14 or 15, and there's not a clear sign of either abduction or like runaway or wandering off misadventures, that like the first place to look is at the behavior of the direct caregiver, is what you've always told me. And I think you, like when we were texting back and forth about this, you mentioned kind of Casey Anthony, which I think Casey Anthony's case with her daughter, Kaylee Anthony, was one of those situations where she was fantasizing about this other life without the kid. And I understand the legal issues surrounding that. That's not really what I'm addressing here. But that kid was, essentially drugged and duct taped. And you could fall into a lot of places, but I don't think that you can really fall, if you're into true crime, on the side of, Casey Anthony is completely innocent. Whether it's she killed her daughter outright, she tucked her daughter away so she could go do something she wasn't, the daughter drowned in the pool, whichever are the theories that you stick your nose into, the responsibility there, no matter how you shake it, it falls on the direct caregiver. And you could even extend that to some other members of the family if you had to with Casey Anthony.
Right. And I just want to say Casey Anthony was acquitted of the charges against her. So.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like that case, no matter how you shake it, it loses the ability to be an accident when you realize that the kid was like duct taped and put in a duffel bag and dropped,
Well, and also she didn't report the child missing. That's the very first thing.
And that's where you start to look, like you said, direct caregivers are the ones who are responsible to do that.
Right. And so in this case,
I wondered if it was a hot car death, though. That's like 900 miles that this woman has traveled.
It could come out to be that, but honestly, there's no reason for someone to do that in the event of a hot car death.
Well, so you're leaving, hot car death has happened, and this is one of those things where you said, they're treating it as a homicide. People are starting to treat hot car deaths as a homicide.
Well, sure, but I assumed that the body was physically, the homicide was obvious through he was beaten up or something like that, stabbed. I don't know. I imagined it to be a very gruesome type situation. Just the way that I was reading it off of the people talking about it, it seemed to me like, they released so little about it.
But you said something, and I do want your opinion on this. I'm not trying to interrupt you. You said something really weird about her. I was actually out traveling, doing something. You sent me a mugshot, and you said they arrested her. I think I saw a link that I shared with you and said they arrested her. You pulled up the fact that on her mugshot, she was wearing lipstick and she had eyelashes on.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
What stood out there?
That she had on lipstick and was wearing eyelashes. It seemed, of course, I guess she could have had tattooed lips and the eyelashes were already on. But so she's with a guy that's not her child's father. I don't know I don't know who he is. I don't know what he had to do with the case. And then, as far as I'm concerned, the lipstick and the eyelashes tells me that it wasn't an accidental hot car death. In the event that you have accidentally killed your child in a hot car death, and I just want to say 7 would be really old for that, because 7-year-olds can actually get out of the car. If she had accidentally killed him and she had left and, was remorseful, you would see that. Seems like, and I actually hate it when investigators are like, they weren't acting like they were supposed to be acting, because I feel like a lot of different people could have a lot of different reactions and they could all be completely non-indicative of guilt or innocence. It's just the way the person is. But it seems like she was ready for her close-up, I believe was what your response was.
That was the feeling I got with, there's just something, she's smiling, and I don't want to,
smirking.
Yeah, she's smirking. I don't want to judge her either. I'm the first one to defend people who are being, sort of beleaguered by investigators. And I've said this to you in like numerous cases that like you don't know what's going on, sort of in someone's head. But with this one, there's a lot.
I don't see how you can explain that.
I can't. That's what I was about to say. This particular case is, so first of all, you can't really get a much more common name than Samantha Rodriguez. I will just go ahead and say, and this is what I told you, I know nothing about this woman. Nothing. Like, I know what the investigators have told me, and I have started to be able to hunt down like a little bit of her background. But Samantha Rodriguez, just doing a social media search, brings back thousands of people. And
yeah, I'm sure. So she's 35. That surprised me. The fact that she was 35, so that would make her a 28-year-old mother. I don't know if she has any additional children.
So it's definitely, it's out of Casey Anthony territory right there.
Well, because Casey Anthony was young. Yeah. And so the point that I was saying about Casey Anthony was, and again, she was acquitted of the charges against her with regard to her daughter. But you have to think, okay, up to a certain age, children are in the responsibility of their direct caregiver. Now, it just so happened in this case with Liam, his mother, she just fell off the radar. She fell off of everybody's radar. And she had left a note for the husband that implied that she was leaving him. And I assumed that it could have been expected, or it could have been at least not surprising to him. And so, wanting to wait for the waters to calm or whatever, he didn't really act on it. It ended up that this family friend happens to see this, what the investigators put out to the media to ask the public for help. And she was the one who was able to help investigators identify this little boy, because she realized she hadn't seen somebody she should have come across within, a couple of weeks, and she hadn't seen them. And then I assume she tried to get a hold of them and couldn't. It seems to me like she was probably going to start a new life. And it, especially, that the lipstick and eyelashes really bothers me. I would love to think that this was not a premeditated situation where she drove this little boy to the beach and gave him like this great last day and then killed him. But I'm afraid that may be what has happened. So she was getting rid of her baggage.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So this is not really so much an annihilator situation. It's sort of like cleaning house, but not. She didn't do anything to the husband.
Right, she left him.
Nick.
So why didn't she leave her son?
Well, so this is a thing I read last night, and I don't know how true this is, but it is. A couple of sources are reporting this. The boy's grandfather told the Denver Post that there was something wrong with Sam, and that Liam himself had a home aide to help him deal with behavioral issues, and that person moved away as the pandemic began. And they were having trouble with Liam because Liam they called him a special dependent. So
he's probably on the autism spectrum.
I think he was either on the autism spectrum, which I have not been able to confirm that independent of what I read. But I did read that they were having trouble keeping him enrolled in one of the places that he had been enrolled in. That seemed to be, when I looked up the name of it, it was a school that dealt with emotional and intellectual situations. Because it's not even disabilities necessarily. They're just dealing with, children who are having trouble acclimating to public schools. And this is pre-pandemic. So when the pandemic began, they had a home health aide who left. And I think
Do you think she just got, it just got to be too much?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we'll find out here. And this is one of those cases where, again, I don't know a lot about her. and I'm not going to judge her on the lipstick and the eyelashes because she may have, for lack of a better word, she may have snapped.
Okay, yes, she may have snapped, but I feel like people who snap, at least at some point, they end up being remorseful.
Well, and again, we don't know one way or the other yet, and that could still happen here. But my point with Samantha Rodriguez is this: when people snap, they do things that don't make any sense, even to them. And the only reason, like you can look at it from the outside and say, "Oh, it was this motive," but the truth is, she may not have a motive. She may have just had enough and not been able to deal with it herself. Because if this is being her son, maybe she shared some characteristics with him, and if that, and I'm not saying that she definitely did, but a violent outburst resulting in murder. Because the other thing I read was the kid was confirmed alive in Vegas. They found him on CCTV footage. If they found him on CCTV footage, that's a very short window for her to have been in Laguna Beach, have been in Victorville, and have been in a hotel in Vegas, have killed the kid, and continued driving. That window has narrowed time-wise for her to be all the places that they said she was. Like I said, that's almost 1,000-mile journey from her home down through Southern California, through Vegas, up to Colorado.
About 5 days.
Yeah, that's a lot of days driving. Like with or without a kid, that's a lot of driving. I can imagine that she potentially, I think she'll end up with a manslaughter charge. You asked me what I thought would happen.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to go with it. But I do. So, okay, I want to be very clear before I say this. I have never physically hit my child. Okay. I don't believe in beating my kid, but so this is what I want to say. And I need to make that clear. I feel a great sense of relief that I never became that person. And the reason I'm saying that is because it is so stressful to have a small child, which this little boy was 7, but I guess, if he did have some special needs, it could have made him need at a younger level. So, he could act like a 3 or 4-year-old. I don't know. But so, the younger a child is, the more stressful it is. And there have been days in my life where I could have totally snapped. And I'm just so glad that I had the wherewithal to not snap. And I didn't end up being,
right,
a person with a mugshot because I, snapped and killed my child.
Or anything related to that. Anyone or anything. You didn't,
Right. And so it's not that I am sure what she's doing may have made sense to her at the time. It's no excuse. And the reason I say all of that is because I feel like anytime a mom or a dad is in a situation like that, there's help to be had. People don't always see that the help is needed, but if you reach out and you say, I need help, you can get help. And that would have been that's really all that needed to happen here was she needed some help. She needed a break, clearly, regardless of whether she planned this or she snapped. I think that some communication would have been very helpful, and it could have possibly saved this child's life. But at the same time, I know how hard it can be to ask for help. But having lived through, taking care of a child and it being really overwhelming, you should always reach out and try to get help instead of getting to this point.
Right. And I agree that people should not be afraid to ask for help, man, woman, and also, children, whenever they can, they should be able to ask for help as well. I think this case will be interesting to see how it unfolds. I think the internet's going to eat this woman alive.
I wish she had been. I wish she had mascara running down her face. That would have made.
Oh, I don't know about that. I wouldn't have bought that either.
Well, but I don't know.
I follow what you're saying. You wish that you could see something evidenced from her being picked up and whatnot. Her booking photo and her driver's license photo look exactly the same to me. Like she
Well,
has
she's
no
actually more
expression.
dressed up in her. She's got more makeup on in her booking photo than she has on her driver's license photo.
I'm just saying she doesn't look like she has any expressive tendencies at all.
Yeah, I was really surprised at. I was surprised at how old the adult responsible for this ended up being.
Yeah, that was a little surprising.
But if there is something there that would make them less mature, that would explain it. But, this is a good illustration of sort of my point. Now, another thing is, so they've made deductions that she alone is more than likely responsible for this. And I'm sure they've got evidence to support their theories. But, the fact that they saw her check into a motel or hotel by herself, that indicates, she wasn't stressed out and she wasn't under duress or in someone else's control. And so that right there immediately, like she did it of her own accord. I wish that I was hoping there was going to be some other element of this, but it's tried and true that it is almost always, so 99.9% of the time, the direct caregiver, the person who would have reported the child missing and who did not report the child missing, is just about always going to be responsible for the child being an unidentified body or the child being missing. And that's great to know, from a statistical point of view, that historically 99.9% of the time, it's going to be the direct caregiver. It is not a stranger situation. Or the direct caregiver is also deceased or missing, and it is a stranger or it is someone else. But this really shows that because, we didn't know when the little boy was found who it was going to end up being.
Right.
Or what the situation was going to end up being. But it's really, really rare for it to not be, for a child to be taken and it to not be their direct caregiver.
Well, and so the reason this case came about is I had been following it. I really wanted to know if we were looking at a geographical issue with the identification. I was following this one largely on Reddit and Facebook, and I do that sometimes to see sort of, there comes a point in there I'm not really looking at the case itself. I'm not looking at Liam Mustad or the other gentleman who was accused. And I'm not necessarily looking at Xavier Harrelson or his mom per se, but I'm looking at how people are responding to everything. Because I have a fascination with this community of people out there who are simultaneously rallying to achieve justice of some kind, but also a lot of times they're trying to find a person. They're trying to do it and they're acting out of the good of their heart, but man, they get judgy really quick. That's the other case that's still kind of looming right now. So Liam, he's been found. It looks like it is direct caregiver related. We'll know more about that case as it unfolds in the news. Liam being found sort of contrasts exactly the fact that Xavier Harrelson has not been found. Not only has he not been found, the media has gone relatively dark on this case, and the sheriff and the FBI have stopped talking about him. And I'm curious, we've learned quite a few things about Xavier Harrelson and his mom and the area that they live in, which is, this is all in Montezuma, Iowa, which is about as far into the middle of nowhere as you could possibly get.
Right. That's kind of illustrated if you take a look at where they've been searching for Xavier. Now, I just want to point out really quick. So when you are absorbing the news, it is probably, I will doubt very seriously that there's ever going to be a misidentification again. Okay. For one thing, but for another thing, it never happens that you're getting a body reported found and then a child reported missing that line up the way that this situation lined up. It just doesn't happen. It was completely logical, even though it was incorrect. They absolutely, the logical step would be to make sure that that body was not this child that has been reported missing. So but in the future, this will never happen again. There will never be a situation where there will be a little boy found, misidentified, and a little boy missing that could actually fit the description that has been given about the little boy that's been found.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of stuff you can go and read about Xavier Harrelson, and I found that interesting. I went and looked where they searched. I went and looked around this area. Even the Google map had a controlled burn going on. Did you see that? Like the satellite photos of the Google maps around the search area had a controlled burn going on.
Oh yeah, I think you sent me a picture of that.
Yeah, so it's just miles and miles and miles of smoke and flame. I found that fascinating. Now, as small as this area is, there's a couple of things. How deep did you get into this?
I got pretty deep, actually. I've been checking on the status of Xavier's case every single time I, get online to check anything. And so there hasn't been a whole lot that has shown up that I've seen that's changed. It did start coming out that, so at first when he was reported missing, which was May 27th, he's now been missing for 13 days. A friend of his mother reported him missing. That's the very first thing. It sends a red flag up to me because, like I just talked about with Liam, in cases where you've got a found body of a child or a missing child, the first red flag is when their direct caregiver has not reported them missing. I don't know that that's necessarily the case here. It is entirely possible that his mother felt like he would come back, that it was unnecessary to report him missing. I don't know what the dynamic is. She hasn't spoken out, which, that's completely up to her. So
this area is really small, and I always get confused by tiny areas like this. So to give everybody an idea, the town where this took place has about 1,800 people. The county where this took place is actually only about 18,000 people. So this is a really, really small population with a large geographic footprint overall. And, it's in Iowa. It's literally in the heart of the country. It's dead center middle of the country. But when you're talking about 18,000 people, and I think I read that it was something like 600 square miles for this area. This is one of those things where I could see it being an abduction. I could see it being a runaway. I could see it being something within the family or friend group happening. I say all those population things and all the square mile things to bring this up. Where they lived, you have 4 registered sex offenders, even though there's only 8
in the neighborhood, right?
Well, one of them is, so there's more than that in the immediate area, but there's 4 that either live on the same, that are either, they have registered addresses either on the same lot, meaning the same address with a different number, or in about what I would call a 5-block radius. It's hard to measure it that way because this is a rural area, so it's not a block, but very one street over to basically. Another. Yeah, they're very close to each other.
And we looked, so you said that there were 4, and so we looked, and it, based on the crimes that were committed, we were able to sort of narrow down the potential there. Obviously, anybody could have done anything at any point in time, but there's just really one sort of that fit. And I would hope that law enforcement has looked into that. Well,
that's not weird. So I don't like to do that type of speculation per se, but yeah, you're right. There's definitely a set of suspects that should be being looked at.
Right. And if we found it, certainly they found it. But so, to put this case into sort of the reality that we're in, and because it's happening real time, you've got a 10-year-old little boy who, from all accounts, had a fight with his mother. And after the fight with his mother, the following morning, allegedly or purportedly, is seen leaving his home wearing pajama bottoms and a shirt and black high top shoes. Okay. I've been looking at
Did
so
you
many
read if they found his bike? That's one of the questions I
I
had.
haven't. Okay, so his bikes are at his home. Problem is, it was initially reported that he was seen leaving on his bike, and then it was retracted that he left on his bike. And so, right there, problem. I still don't know who has said this, but this is what has essentially happened. The mother was on the phone with her friend that ultimately reported Xavier missing, and I think perhaps the mom relayed that Xavier left on his bike to her friend. And then the friend relayed all this information to police when she called the police because the mom wasn't calling police. Now, again, it could be that the mother is embarrassed by the situation. And it's not entirely clear if that is what happened or if investigators were able to independently verify that, somebody saw him leaving or a camera saw him leaving, or it's not been said. And that makes me think that it's just the repeat of the story. And in that case, if his mom said that he left on his bike, and what was said is both of his bikes are at the home. And so that means she was giving excuses to a friend who, took them seriously, reported it to authorities, and then she had to backpedal.
I can't get a good grasp on this. And I will say that, if you're listening along with us and what we're doing, and you decide that you want to get involved in this, you're going to see a lot of interesting stuff. The social media activity of the family has been quite varied and unusual. You can't second guess the situations where there's an open and active law enforcement response, including at this point, they're adding a reward into the mix here. There's a lot going on. There's law enforcement involved, local and state police. The FBI is involved. The gist of this is going to be an interesting one to wait and see on because it could go so many different directions.
What directions do you think it could go?
Well, misadventure's a possibility here, depending on, I've read about cases where kids go and get themselves stuck somewhere and aren't found for months or years, including chimneys of local houses, including, underneath this one kid I read about getting stuck after falling between a refrigerator and a wall in a local school that they had broken into. And they were there, so it was, at that point it was summertime and that kid was there until the fall. One of the chimney cases was years before they found the local teenager.
So is that what you're thinking here?
Running away is hard to do at Xavier's age. Where
He's
you do it
too
successfully.
Young.
Yeah.
He's too young for that. And so he was 10 and he turned 11 the Sunday after he went missing.
Yeah, and
So
he definitely
missed his
could.
birthday.
He did miss his birthday. He could definitely hoof it quite a few places in this town as far as walking.
Somebody would have seen him.
I tend to think that as well. We don't have a really good timeline on him except from the neighbor's report.
Right. And well, it's not the neighbor necessarily. It's her friend that she was on the phone with that reported him missing.
Yeah, my
Okay.
impression is that based on the addresses, I think she's also a neighbor.
Okay, and that could be possible. So, a couple of things. If his bike legitimately is at home and she legitimately initially said that he left on his bike, I would give a little bit of forgiveness as far as it being a stressful situation and her accidentally assuming he left on his bike. But if she said she saw him leaving on his bike and both bikes are at home, that's going to be a problem. Another thing is he's a little bit borderline. Clearly he was able to leave the house and go do things on his own to some extent. So misadventure, I guess, would be a possibility, but it seems really odd that it would be on the heels of a really bad fight. Or maybe it's not really odd. Maybe that's completely normal. Maybe that's when kids go out and do things like that. And so, I don't know if we mentioned it, but his mother, so she has a disability, and my understanding is that she wears a prosthetic leg that she has some trouble with, and so I guess that makes it hard for her to get around. That makes me wonder, well, if something did happen at home, I feel like it's a situation where she probably snapped because they were arguing. Actually, I did quite a bit of research and I found out some other stuff. So she has had a ticket recently that was actually due to be paid, and it was $600, $500, I don't know. And I wondered if that had some sort of effect on this kid's birthday. And that's what they were fussing about. Like the fact she had to pay the fine instead of getting him birthday cake.
It's a troubling situation. I have seen where the family sort of locked down their social media. So that whole neighborhood, starting where he lives, and just if you branch out, there is a lot of people with criminal records in that area. I don't put a lot of stock into. I understand what you're saying.
I'm not saying it's because she was driving without a license. That's what the ticket was for, and I just thought maybe that influence. I'm not saying she's a terrible person for that. I mean, she should get her license and do it the legal way. But I'm just saying I felt like that could have been causing some stress.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm having trouble imagining this mom being responsible for him coming to his demise. From the perspective of one, doing it in the first place, because from all accounts, he seems to be sort of a caregiver for her.
That's what has been said, yes.
And two,
but that makes it less likely that he ran away.
Well, I'm agreeing, but I'm trying to picture how she would dispose of him.
Right, and so that would have to involve another person, I think.
Yeah,
and that said to be 100 pounds. So 100 pounds of dead weight, you're not going to be able to move that on when you have problems putting your prosthetic leg on and getting around.
Right. And that's,
so again, somebody would have seen something.
And it's a full leg. This is all the way up to her. So it looked to me in the photos and the descriptions I saw, it's her left leg. It looks like her knee goes into the prosthetic. So that is an incredibly complicated life circumstance to deal with if you are trying to dispose of a body. Seriously, it is.
Yeah, no kidding. There would have to be somebody else involved, and eventually somebody will talk in that type of situation. And I don't want it to be that the mom did anything to him. I liked the idea of possibly a situation where he could be somewhere. I know we talked about it briefly, and I'm going to make the connection here, but have you watched Cruel Summer yet?
I have not seen Cruel Summer yet. No.
Well, I've been watching that, and the season is about done, actually. So it made me think of Xavier, and I wondered if, now at this point in time, the way that this story has taken off, and I'm not entirely sure if it's that way everywhere or if it's just for me because of Liam being found and Xavier going missing and all that happened. It's been just rampant in my news feed. It seems like if this were the case, the person that was helping them would go to the police and say, I have him, he's safe, so stop looking, but here's the deal. And that doesn't seem to have happened. What if somebody, there was a person who could be, just sort of giving him a place to be while he was having issues with this mother? And I thought, oh, that would be so awesome, because honestly, I don't have a good feeling about this case at all. I don't feel like a stranger abducted him. It would be the best outcome at this point if he had a misadventure, unless he just walks home and he's just fine. It's 13 days is too long to be teaching your mother a lesson. It's especially since he missed his birthday.
It's the 10-year-old thing. It's him being 10 that throws me off. It almost has to be either an abduction.
I don't think he was abducted.
The family did it. Well, I follow you. I'm just taking a different
The way
perspective
that it
than
was,
you.
the way that, okay, so then I wonder, well, is he still at the house? Like, because he,
See that you get into dark territory for me there because I don't know.
they've searched, but I mean, I'm just saying, like, under the information that we have before us, okay, it is, I mean, nothing is impossible, but the closest thing to impossible that there is, I would say, would be that Xavier had a fight with his mom and then randomly left the next morning and was abducted. Okay. That's nearly impossible, though not completely impossible. Okay. So I've kind of ruled that out in my head. Could he, and by that I mean a stranger abduction. And I don't know for sure that he knows any of these predators that live close by to him. And when I say predator, like, these are people who are registered on the sex offender list. Like, they are a registered predator. And, I felt like there was one that might apply to the situation. The others didn't really seem like that would be their cup of tea. If he didn't know them, they would count as a stranger abduction. And because there are quite a few there, I mean, it's possible. Then, is it possible that somebody took him in and then something happened after they were helping him?
That would be possible. I'm still picturing that, like, this area, what I picture, and I'm not really contradicting you as much as offering a different thing. There's not much in the way of recreational area. There's a couple of places he could have gone as far as, like, we would say forests or parks or whatever you want to say there. There's a lot of very, very barren area out around this place. I could see him going into one of the local schools or one of the manufacturing buildings and eventually being found having been up to something. Whether he's alive or not, I don't really know how that would work. But the reason I brought up the offenders, so to speak, is that mobile home park is a really small area. It's only like 15, 20 mobile homes, and they're all right there together. So if you lived in there, you probably knew who your neighbors were.
Right. And so that, that wouldn't technically be a stranger. It's not what I consider to be a stranger abduction.
Right. And that's a little more complicated to get into there, because that gives somebody the ability to take the kid away without much physical problem or challenges, I guess, that you could potentially face. There
was a rumor that he would knock on, like, he would fight with his mom quite a bit. I assume she probably, it would be very difficult to be living, be missing a leg and having issues with your prosthetic leg. And so I understand she might be irritable. And so I heard that he would often fight with his mother and then go knock on doors of neighbors and ask to spend the night.
I've read a couple of things like that as well.
That concerned me because I felt like he might have knocked on the wrong person's door.
Right, but then that would give the explanations for, like, I think one of your questions right now is, how is it not someone he knows? Well,
no, that's not one of my questions. I actually feel like I know what happened, probably.
So one of the things that I noticed was there is a busy area right next to the house that appears to have trucks in and out. And I wondered if he didn't take a ride.
Well, do you mean that in, like, a bad way?
I mean, like, did he get in the back of somebody's cab on, like, a sleeper truck and, like, literally make it out of town and eventually will call and say he doesn't know how to get back? And right now he's on an adventure. I'm trying to find
somebody would have seen him.
Maybe. That's a possibility.
That ever happened?
You mean, like, has a kid ever successfully run away that way?
No. I mean, well, maybe. I mean, like, has a kid ever, like, gotten into somebody's, the cab of a truck, ridden somewhere, gotten out without being seen, and, like, that kind of thing? It just doesn't seem plausible to me. Sounds like it would be a good movie, though.
That happens. Things like that. I mean, I'm giving you a variation of things that happen all the time.
I don't think so. I don't think they do happen all the time.
You don't think successful runaways happen?
Not like that. Okay, so here's the elements that you're covering there. An unknown mode of transportation, right? That, a 10-year-old wouldn't normally have. So it's something that we're not going to immediately think about, which it would be him going incognito in somebody's truck and then being able to travel a long distance without anybody being able to account for that, right? And
I'm not even saying a long distance. I'm just saying out of that town.
Of some sort. But it's got to be enough to get him distanced to where, for one thing, nobody recognizes him. For another thing, like, what do you do when you are 10 years old and you're not at home and you're not doing something planned? I mean, I assume he has no money. What do you do? How has he eaten for the last 13 days?
Well, I followed a case in 2018 out of New Jersey where a kid ran away. I think he ran away on October the 30th, and he was found about 21 days later in Philadelphia. He ran away from New Jersey, and then he popped up in Philadelphia. He was 14 or 15 years old. He was an honor student. He had no problems at home, hadn't had any fights with any of his family. He just decided, I'm out.
Well, 14 or 15 is more of the age I would expect that.
That's what I was about to say. Where, I have certainly followed, in that instance, the kid got on a train, by the way. I followed kids getting on buses. I followed kids getting into cars.
Okay, that's a completely different thing, though. Than like
how?
Because you buy a ticket for a bus.
Okay, I understand what you were saying, but in the case of a 14 or 15-year-old who buys a ticket for a train or a bus and manages to stay under the radar for 21 days, my point is we're not there yet with Xavier, but I think we're coming to the end of the ability of a 10 turning 11-year-old to stay gone. I think we're coming to the end of
past that. I don't see how he would have fed himself to this point without. Okay, so yes,
you can go 3 weeks without food. So 3 minutes you can go without air. 3 days you can go without water, and 3 weeks you can go without food.
Okay, but why was
I'm just telling you why I say 3 weeks.
Right, that's fine, but there's no reason for him. He's not going to go 3 weeks without food just because he had a fight with his mother.
You don't know that he's 3 weeks without food.
Okay, 13 days. He's not going to go 13 days.
He could have stolen food.
Okay, but wouldn't somebody notice?
Maybe he took a box of something maybe he took a box of Cheerios with him. We don't know. That's what I'm saying. So my point is, if it's not misadventure and the family didn't do it, what else is there? So when I say family, go ahead and say family or people who live nearby. I don't think this kid is going to be a straight up stranger abduction for the reasons that you stated previously. And that is having an argument with your mom and then getting abducted in a random way by a complete stranger we're stretching credulity at that point.
The closest you can get to impossible without actually being impossible.
Right. So what I picture will end up happening here is either someone will confess or his body will show up. The best case scenario, he just comes home. Which, if he's going to just come home, we're to the point that should be happening now. It should happen by this weekend. Then after that, I don't think that'll be good.
I think, so this is the first case where, and I don't know what it is about it because there's been other cases that have happened, but so this is in real time. So we had the little boy that was found, and then Xavier went missing, and then we are now 13 days into watching this child checking the news, him not being, accounted for. And I'm rooting for him so much. I will be absolutely heartbroken if he doesn't come back home. I don't see it being plausible. And I know that there's ways that it could happen, but I guess I got a little bit too involved in this case, maybe because I'm checking constantly, and I'm actually disappointed that they haven't updated anything. And I don't see how he could. There's no reason for him to be gone and not just come home. And there's also, I don't see a plausible way that he would have continued to be unaccounted for without being hurt and possibly dead.
I agree with the hurt and dead part. I remember Ben Ownby from Missouri. Him and Sean Hornback. Do you remember this story or no?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, so they were kidnapped, but Sean Hornback was kidnapped. He was 11 years old. He was kidnapped on October the 6th of 2002, and he was found alive on January 12th, 2007. At the same time he was found alive, Ben Ownby was found alive, who he had only been missing for a week. They were actually there to search their kidnapper's apartment. It's either a search warrant they were serving or an arrest warrant they were serving, but it didn't have anything to do with the two of them. So my point is, kids do show back up that are missing. And, Hornback, the reason I bring Hornback up is he was 11 years old when that happened. He was riding his bike and he vanished.
Well, and again, we don't know if Xavier was on his bike. I would certainly say that if he was on his bike, he could have gotten a lot further than not being on his bike as far as travel.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying the age. It's pretty rare to find them alive from this age.
Oh, yeah. I don't see how. Now, in the case you were just talking about, those kids were abducted.
Yeah, they were stranger abductions from somebody that lived like an hour and a half away.
Okay, so it was like random stranger abduction, which is...
stalking abductions, but yeah.
Right. I'm concerned a lot at this point because I don't see... There's no reason for Xavier to continue to be missing and to be getting the help a 10-year-old would need, or he's turned 11, an 11-year-old would need to survive. Somebody that should alert authorities would need to be involved, and they would say, hey, he's here safe with me. And the fact that that's not happening, it concerns me because it seems like he would be endangered at that point because whoever's helping him and not reporting the fact that, he's there with them, I don't think their intentions would be good necessarily.
No, definitely not. If you don't know that you're looking for someone in the first 48 hours, they can get very far in a number of ways, meaning on foot, on bike, by stranger abduction. There's a lot of ways for kids to disappear in the first 48 hours that you cannot track them after that because of how far they can be gone from the situation.
Right. And I wonder, so I guess what I'm thinking is with the way that technology has advanced, I don't know that we've watched like sort of a real-time version of this, but it just seems like that would be practically impossible, like for them to actually get too far out of reach or whatever.
That's becoming more and more true. The old 48-hour rule was really, the idea was if you don't find an abduction victim in the first 48 hours that they're missing and known to be missing, then the odds drastically reduce for finding them safe and alive.
I was going to say, yeah, really unlikely. I mean, either an abduction victim will either be murdered or they will be in captivity for a long time. Like that's usually how that goes. Like they're murdered pretty quickly or they're found, a million years later with 5 kids from their captor.
I wanted to bring up a few cases where, well, there's one case, I want to mention it because it's an old case. I've read about it over the years. There is no new information in this case. It's just in the wake of all these missing children's cases we end up covering, I wanted to cover something that hadn't been covered by a lot of other podcasts and media outlets, where it was an example of something that was completely and truly unsolved. And that is the disappearance of Nicole Morin.
Thank you. Today marks the 29th anniversary of the disappearance of Nicole Moran. The Toronto Police Service have chosen this day to launch our social media campaign with the release of a Twitter and Facebook site dedicated to helping to find Nicole. On Tuesday, July the 30th, 1985, Nicole Moran was abducted from her apartment building located at 627 the West Mall in Etobicoke. It is a 21-story apartment complex with a swimming pool at the rear of the building. Nicole had made plans with a friend to meet in the lobby of her building to go swimming. At approximately 11 a.m., Nicole said goodbye to her mother and left the apartment to go meet her friend. Tragically, Nicole was abducted on the way to the meeting and was never seen again. Police were first contacted about the abduction later that evening. What resulted was the most intensive police search for a missing person in the history of the Toronto Police Service. Over 15,000 hours were put into the investigation between the date of her abduction and January of the following year. Over 900 community members joined the search for Nicole, yet no trace of her was ever found. The search for Nicole involved the creation of a task force in 1985 with a total of 20 members. The task force conducted a coordinated search of Etobicoke involving community members using cars, horses, aircraft, dogs, and all-terrain vehicles. Despite their best efforts, no trace of Nicole Moran has ever been found. We are working with our partners at Crime Stoppers, and they have developed a video reenactment. I'm now going to call upon Crime Stoppers coordinator Chris Shirk to talk about that video.
Thank you, Madeline, and thank you for the opportunity to stand before you today. I'm Chris Shirk, and I'm the Toronto Crime Stoppers Program Coordinator. Crime Stoppers is a not-for-profit charity working in partnership with the police, the media, and the public. We've recently filmed a reenactment of the last known actions of Nicole Moran at 627 the West Mall. The video is 1 minute long. I'm asking that members of the public watch the video. I'm asking that the assembled media today assist us in making that video available to them. It's only 1 minute long. There's a number of ways historical crime is solved. Witnesses may remember something they saw that can assist investigators. Also, criminals talk. They brag and they confess. My belief is someone out there may know what happened to Nicole Moran in 1985 and for whatever reason feels like they can't come forward. With Crime Stoppers, you can. A simple phone call to 416-222-8477, 222-TIPS, will put you in contact with a trained call taker. That call taker will never ask your name. Your information is 100% anonymous, and we'll make sure no identifiers are in that tip. This protection is endorsed by the Supreme Court of Canada, the highest legal authority in Canada. Quite simply, no one will ever know you called. You can submit a tip anonymously at our website at 222tips.com or download our smartphone app for any of the 3 major platforms, BlackBerry, Android, iPhone. The video is 1 minute long. It's on our website, Facebook, mobile app, and YouTube channel. Max Milk Stores will be running the video. I'm asking everybody to take just 1 minute. Watch the video, make the call, and help us find Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you. We have set up a Facebook. It will be found under Find Nicole. And if you go on Twitter, the hashtag Find Nicole will also provide you with some information. I am appealing to any member of the public who has information regarding this case to once again contact police at 416-808-2200. Call Crime Stoppers, visit our social media sites, and we will contact you and update you with information as it becomes available. Are there any questions?
What makes you think that now, almost 3 decades later, you'll be able to find anything that you weren't able to find back then?
We're using the methods that we have available to us now that weren't available back in 1985, such as social media campaigns. And we're hoping that by reaching out, we'll get a broader spectrum of the public, and that somebody who has that information will feel comfortable now in coming forward and providing us with that info.
What was your last or most current lead in this case?
We receive leads continually. We have since 1985. We've received leads as recently as this year, and we continue to follow up on them.
The detective you spoke to earlier said that some of those leads lead her to believe that you could find her. And
Absolutely. We've never lost hope that we can find Nicole, and that is our hope that we will one day find her alive. But we do hope that at the very minimum that we'll find information as to what happened on that day. Yes.
Sarge, is this the first time that you've referred to her disappearance as an abduction?
Well, that's how we've classified it. People just don't vanish. So she has disappeared, and we're treating it as an abduction. Absolutely.
Detective, why not treat this as a homicide? At some point, after so many years, often you look at an investigation and say, we assume that now she's been murdered. Why don't you think that?
Well, we don't want to make that leap and draw any conclusions with the case, but having said that, we do work closely with our partners at the Homicide Squad, and we do rely on them for their assistance, and they have monitored our case from its inception in 1985, and we do continue to liaise with them. Yes.
In cases like this, it's someone who knew the person. Do you think that it's someone who knew Nicole?
I don't know. Sometimes it is someone who knew the person, and sometimes it's a random act of opportunity, and I can't say either way.
were there ever any suspects, if you can refresh your memory, in this case?
There were several persons of interest at the time that were investigated, and they have been cleared.
Can you get into what kinds of leads you've been getting over the years? You said you had one this year.
We get information from people who, in hindsight, they think back and think that somebody that they knew who lived in the area was suspicious at the time. So we do follow up and investigate and try and locate those people and find out where they were back on the date of the disappearance.
Why is that been cleared?
Yes.
Why is it that you're still getting these calls? I mean, are you still putting, other than today, have you still been putting this out there that you're still looking for information?
Absolutely. From 1985, we've appealed to the public for information. We continue to do so. There are posters out there. There are agencies that broadcast this out to through social media and through mainstream media sources. So we've never given up hope, and we never want to see a day where people don't call us and call in with information.
Just whether the reenactment depicts Nicole saying goodbye to her mother who's in the apartment, goes down the hall, gets in an elevator, and actually gets out in the lobby. Are those her last known movements, or can you just tell us what you know exactly about what she did, what's been confirmed?
Right. We do have conflicting reports. We do know that she left the apartment with the intent to go meet her friend in the lobby. Some reports indicate that she got out in the lobby. Other reports indicate that she did not. So that's just something that we're continuing to investigate, and we've re-interviewed the people that provided us with that information back in 1985 with the hope that they'll remember and something else will come to their mind.
Was there any surveillance video at the time?
No. Not within the apartment.
Detective Sergeant, what about her parents? Take us back to how old they were then. Where are they now? And what about other children? How are they coping after all these years?
Unfortunately, her mother is deceased. Her father is still alive, and we're in constant communication with him. He is very, very grateful for all the efforts from the public, from the media, and from Toronto Police Service throughout the years to try and find his daughter.
Any other children?
No.
Do you think that she is alive after all of this time? I know that's a tough question.
It's my hope that she is alive, and we've certainly seen recently cases in the United States where people have been missing for a number of years and they have been found alive. So we are not prepared to give up that hope that one day we will find Nicole alive.
The more recent tips that you've received, have you already completed investigating them and clearing them?
We're continuing to investigate some of the tips. They do require a little more work trying to track people down than other tips, so we are still working on some. And we're actually going back and reviewing the entire case and putting it on a database so that we can take a look at every single person that was investigated by the police back in the mid-'80s and just take a second look at it.
Just in relation to the apartment building, was there a lot of families and children living there, or can you tell us a little bit about the makeup of the...
Yes, absolutely. It was, an upper middle class neighborhood in Etobicoke, and a lot of families living in the area. Nobody from that time has forgotten this incident. It haunted people at the time. It continues to do so. And those people still keep in contact with us, and everybody has that hope that we will find Nicole.
Just to confirm, did Nicole actually meet with her friend in the lobby?
No.
So her friend didn't see her. It's other people who thought they saw her in the lobby?
Yes.
What scenario?
Was her friend late at all, or was she...
Not to my knowledge, no. Her friend was there and made a phone call back up to the apartment to her mother to say that Nicole had not arrived.
Was this video actually shot in the very apartment?
Yes.
Just tell us about going back there and doing this with a little girl.
Yeah, well, we've been planning this for a little while, and last week we had the opportunity to go back there and to film it again. The investigators who are currently working on it went back to the scene with our videographer and refilmed it.
How was it for, to go back in the building? Were people even aware in that building of what happened there?
I'll just call upon Detective Constable Lister McLeod to maybe talk about that. Thank you.
Can I just ask, why did it take so long for her parents to call police? You said it was the evening when they called.
Yeah, I mean, her mother, she was preoccupied at the time. She was working out of her home, and she thought that Nicole was fine and that she had probably met up with somebody else at the time. She had other children that she was looking after at that particular moment, and we certainly don't want to criticize her for the time delay. But having said that, it is imperative that when a child goes missing, the sooner that we get notified, the better. Councilor McLeod?
Thank you. If you can just talk about going back to the building and whether people were aware really of what you were doing, given it had been almost 30 years.
Sure. So we went back last week, and we went with Crime Stoppers and also video services from Toronto Police to help film the actual reenactment. While we were there, we did have a lot of props like the older police cars, so it did draw a lot of attention from the building itself. And we had actually quite a few residents come out and tell us that they lived at the building at the time Nicole was abducted, and that they remember that day, and they sort of reminisced with us. So it still stuck with everybody there. It still haunts a lot of people that live there. There's not a whole lot of mobility from that area as far as people moving out of that building. So you still find quite a few tenants that lived there at the time. So it's a case that's impacted everybody. And I think if we can develop and move this case forward in any way, it's something that we would definitely like to do. So,
can we get your name, please?
Sure. It's Detective Constable Kim Litster McLeod. My last name is spelled Litster -MacLeod.
M-A-C?
M-A-C, yes.
Any other questions? I have a question for either one of you will want to answer that. It kind of goes to the last answer about the mother and the reaction. Certainly, would you say that Nicole's disappearance was one of those game changer disappearance for parents, where it's kind of like a time, you look back and it's like a time capsule of how children were raised, and her disappearance is one that probably changed that for a lot of people.
I think so.
Explain how you think that was the impact?
Absolutely. People, when that happened, it was a very unusual occurrence, and it was unusual for the time, certainly. So people then became so much more aware of their children's surroundings and putting more and more restrictions upon them. And I think as time has evolved, we've certainly continued to do that more and more.
Second, is the friend that she was supposed to meet still around? You guys still in contact with that friend? How's that?
Yes, we are. Yes.
And how's that person doing?
I can't really comment. I personally haven't been in touch with her, but the investigators have. And we actually are planning on following up with her.
When it comes to historical cases like this, do you have any sort of stats, whether locally or in North America, on how often they are successfully solved, 20, 30, 40 years later?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the stats available. We do know that there have been success stories with people who have been missing for decades, and like I said, that is our hope that we will find her alive. Unfortunately, I just don't have the exact numbers nationwide for that.
What are some ways that some of these cases are actually solved?
Quite often it's a tip that comes in from a member of the public or a family member who's been holding on to that information for whatever reason they didn't feel comfortable in coming forward at the time. Sometimes it's through the use of technology and forensic information that becomes available decades down the road, and we get a hit, and that leads us to the perpetrator.
Detective, who else are you still in touch with from the time, and why the friend? You never ended up meeting up with the friend. So the friend essentially wouldn't have seen anything or really known anything, it sounds like.
Well, certainly she had plans to meet with Nicole, so we wanted to speak to her and to find out if they were planning to do anything else that day. And she would have been the last person that had made the arrangements and spoken with her on the phone. So it's critical that we speak to everybody who was involved with her on that last day when she went missing.
Anyone else other than though Nicole's father that you have been in really sort of constant communication with over the years?
We've been in touch with other people, as Constable Lister McLeod referred to, people that live in the building. Also, some of her friends and associates from the time we've been in contact with them. People constantly call in, they want updates, they want information, and we do leave those lines of communication open.
Yes. In the sense that it was someone from the building or someone that came to the building and took her. Was there any ever kind of theories around that?
We looked at both those possibilities. We weren't able to include or exclude either one of them.
Has a reward ever been offered in this case?
Not to my knowledge, but that is something that we'll consider.
Where is the swimming pool that you were going to go to?
It's the building swimming pool. There was another pool adjacent to it, but she was going to the actual condominium pool.
Like inside or is it outdoor?
It's outdoor.
Detective, you said tips led you to believe that you should be looking in certain areas. Is it immediately around the apartment or the immediate area around the apartment building? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, we always search right at the scene. That would be the first place that police would go, and then we'd move outwards from that. So certainly our focus initially on that day in 1985 would have been that building.
When you said the mother was caring for other children at the time, what do you mean by that?
She was operating a daycare in her home at the time.
Sorry, just to confirm, do you believe whoever may have taken her would have lived in the building?
I don't know. I mean, that's certainly something that we've looked at. Was it someone that lived in the building? Was it someone that was there for a particular purpose that day? Or was it random? So those are all things that we haven't been able to confirm.
Just following up on a question a couple of questions ago about the tips leading you, more recent tips, have they led you to search somewhere elsewhere in the actual building in the surrounding area?
Not a particular site or a scene, no. No.
Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes today's conference. The video is available online, or there is a copy down by the sound box for you to take.
This is truly a whodunit with absolutely no evidence. I started reading about this case a very long time ago. I don't have a theory on this case. I just want to cover it because it sort of ties in. This is our transition to the summer cases sort of episode here. We've got an episode with the updates on the other missing kids. This is about this little girl.
This is a horrifying case. And there's been so many resources poured into this. And so I just said like a little bit ago that there was no way Xavier could have had a fight with his mom and left and then got abducted by a stranger. And then, so I'm not entirely clear on the sequence of events. And I don't know at this point that we'll ever be able to really be sure if Nicole made it in the elevator or if she disappeared walking out her door or what happened there. But I don't know that it would be stranger, but like, somebody saw this little girl in her bathing suit with her bag of stuff, and I would say they grabbed her. And I would say more than likely that person probably lived in the hotel building. I mean, the apartment building. I feel like, I don't know if they would have had like registered sex offenders in Toronto at that time, but I think that with all the resources that have been put out for this case, they certainly would have looked into every single person. And I believe you said that they looked in every single apartment within just a small amount of time that she was missing. So she was reported missing by 3 p.m., having gone missing around 11 before noon. So I say that she would have been grabbed by somebody in the apartment building, but like, what did they do with her?
One of the early reports, one of the things that you can read about this is there's this blonde woman with a notebook that shows up in the apartment that nobody really recognized. And they didn't have like images of her or a really good sketch of her. But the idea was she was someone that knew Nicole. And she was there, it's half an hour before Nicole disappears. And you can hear the description here. You can go read about Nicole's case. There's lots of places that you can like read articles from the time. As far as Nicole's case goes, she's going to come up again because there's a couple other missing persons cases that I want to cover over the summer. But I think a couple of them I'm going to have to give you a chance to sort of dig into them because they're old cases and they're really... It's hard for me to do kids' cases objectively. I actually think the blonde woman took her. And I actually think the blonde woman groomed her. And that I think that the note was related in Nicole's case where she says, I'm going to disappear. I think the blonde woman told her that like she could be a princess, or if she went away, her parents would get back together or something. Because from what I read early on in this case, years and years and years ago, Art thought the blonde woman was someone from their church. But the reason the investigation into that went nowhere is because after Nicole disappeared, they never saw her again.
Oh, well, that would be relevant.
Yeah, and it's really complicated because no one really knew anything about her. But it's been suggested, and one of the angles on this that like this case isn't covered a whole lot, but it comes up for me a lot because of the mention of her being seen in the Netherlands videos. The Netherlands videos are going to come up here. It's a very difficult case to research anymore because the FBI and then law enforcement agencies from other countries have decided that they did not want some of the information related to these Netherlands videos to be out there for a number of reasons. Primarily being, and I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, every once in a while, the FBI will go through this mass identification effort. And there might be one going on right now or one of the older ones going on where they will put out bits and pieces of photos trying to identify people from videos where they've done like a massive child porn roundup. So they'll put out this, it's almost like a wall of pictures, and the pictures are they're not great quality.
They're just trying to identify the kids.
If you go, I think the page is called Seeking Information at FBI.gov.
Okay.
But if you go on there, like they used this recently for the riots that happened, where they were trying to identify people based on social media
facial
photographs.
recognition.
Yeah. So there are multiple children that went missing around the same time. If you look at like 1983 to 1987, there's a series of young girls that went missing whose likenesses were found in these tapes, were then CDs and then DVDs. But basically it's recycled child abuse videos that they found them in.
So so you think that she was groomed to be taken and then trafficked?
I think she was not trafficked like in the... Okay, I don't think she was trafficked in the sense that she was like shuttled from motel to motel and like prostituted out. I think she was trafficked in the sense that she was bought or sold. And I do think that videos and photos were taken of her, and then those videos and photos were bought or sold. But I do think that like you could track what happened to her.
So my question would be, well, why is she, she would be 44 years old now, right?
Yeah,
44.
April 1st,
okay, so
she would have been 44.
She'd be 44 years old. So an 8-year-old, I mean, I don't know. I can't really gauge. It seems like an 8-year-old would be, that would be a weird age to be groomed, because it seems like 8-year-olds really talk to their parents a lot. And it seems like that would come up. I am interested about that whole note thing. That's interesting.
I think the note is part of the grooming. I think the grooming comes from the person, one, being a woman, and two, realizing that the parents were separated. I think that's how it happened in this case.
And so, like, I can see where, okay, little babies just get taken, they don't, they may cry or whatever, but they can't really, they're helpless. And then, teenagers, I feel like they can fall under being groomed and not realize it. But then, an 8-year-old, yes, I could see where they could, somebody could attempt to groom them. But it seems like the parents would get wise to it based on just normal interactions with kids that age. But I'm not saying that's not possible. And then I think a lot of times if a child is trafficked in any way, a lot of times they're addicted to drugs and they end up that's part of how the captors keep them. And then they overdose or, their health declines and they die early because they haven't been taken care of or whatever. And I'm still sort of waiting for the whole human trafficking. I understand that it is a real thing, and I'm sort of waiting for that to come full circle. I'd like to see. I have a lot of questions about that, but that's not what this case is about. It's just we're putting out there that it's a possibility that she was trafficked. So she vanished, according to the accounts given, but really what happened was she didn't go where she was going. Her friend was waiting on her and she didn't show up. And the mom assumed she was elsewhere and she wasn't reported missing for a couple of hours. And so, what could have happened in that time is what we're sort of left with. And, if they saw a blonde woman with a notebook who has never come forward, that seems really odd to me that somebody would just be hanging out at an apartment building or whatever.
Well, I don't think she was hanging out at an apartment building. I think this was planned, and I think that she...
Well, that's what I mean. It seems like she would be relevant to the case because people don't just hang out at apartment buildings. That's what I mean.
I think the weirdest parts of this case for me are that there's a lot of loose ends here. They ruled out all of the major immediate suspects. And something that you've taught me over the years is, look for the bright yellow raincoat, look for the umbrella, look for the camera, look for the backpack.
Where's and that bag of stuff?
Exactly. Like where is, if she got picked up and went poof, where's all the stuff that was in her hands? But on the other hand of that, if she was being groomed, and she was being taken away from one life to this other world, why did she make plans with her friend to go swimming?
I don't buy that.
That she knew?
I don't buy that an 8-year-old was preparing to leave and that it was all ducky. I just don't buy that. That's not a typical child's mindset. Now, it could be a lot of things could influence that to make it where it would be possible. But just right off the bat, an 8-year-old's not going to pack their bags and leave to go. And they're not going to tell their friend they're meeting them down at the pool. And, it might have been just enough that she recognized the woman. And if a child recognizes you, you could say a lot of things to put them at ease and have them go willingly with you about something. Just even if they, your parents wouldn't necessarily recognize the person, but you've come into contact with them and they'd say hi. And, you would go with them. Oh, I've lost my puppy. Come help me find it. That kind of thing. And that could be really scary.
So this is the stuff the FBI does on ECAP. They decided they didn't want to share their methods anymore, so they stopped doing that, and her case is one of the ones that got lost. There's about 10 cases from the 80s that probably could have been solved by them continuing to do this process. They don't do it anymore, and people have gotten wise to it at this point, so if they had those older tapes, they wouldn't share them online now, is my thinking. But with this case, did you have anything else to add on the poll? I was going
to ask you, have you seen where they thought it was her? Have you seen what they're talking about? Or are you saying it's not available anymore?
It was a grainy beta video that had been seized in a search by this organization.
Yeah, I would say that. Now, an 8-year-old would be a prepubescent child, so you're looking for a pedophile ring, basically. And It seems like her case should be solvable. And when you're talking about all the resources that have been poured into it, it's unbelievable that it hasn't been solved.
Yeah, it is. This is one of those cases when I rarely say something it's this girl's birthday being so close to mine, by the way. I don't know what it is, but she's my age. Like, she's literally my age. And when I think of horrible cases, I remember reading an article in the 90s when she had been gone for about 10 or 12 years where they were describing everything that they had done to try and find her. And I probably was either a senior in high school or I just shifted over to college, because college is where I really started using the internet for research and stuff. And I remember reading the article about her, and it absolutely floored me, and I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah, it seems like there would have been more witnesses, or she would have left a trail if she was being taken. I don't know. It just seems it's horrifying, because you've got a situation where she was at home, she was somewhere she should have been completely safe, and she vanished. And I'd like to think that all of these cases like this will be solved eventually, but I just don't know. It seems like they couldn't have done anything further.
No, they couldn't have been anything different than here.
Because that's a ton. You said they'd spent like millions of dollars on it in 1985. That is a lot of money.
Like everybody, I was shocked. I was really young, so I don't think I truly appreciated the gravity of the situation. I was out of the country the day that it happened, which I guess in a way is either lucky or unlucky. Perhaps if I had been with her, it wouldn't have happened to her. However, it may have happened to somebody else. And by being away, certainly she was alone that day. We would often go to the swimming pool together. So now that I'm older and I do have an appreciation for it, there is a little bit of regret that perhaps I wasn't there for her at the time. As a parent, it's scary. This world seems to get scarier and scarier. So from that perspective, I do worry that for the safety of my children, but life has to go on, and we have to provide, a good, stable home for our kids and keep them as safe as possible. So I strive to do that every day. Mm-hmm. But from a police perspective, being in the position that I'm in allows me to keep an eye on what's going on with the case. And so I can say with confidence that the case has never been discarded. It's never been put aside. And I know that the Toronto Police Service has maintained a vigilant eye on what's been going on. I'm very hopeful that someone will come forward with information. I think that people have a mentality that perhaps information that they know isn't important, or perhaps the police already have the information. So why come forward? Why tell the police? And I think that what's important to remember is that you don't know what the police know and what they don't know. And there are so many pieces of the puzzle. And the piece that you have might be the piece that we need, might be that last little bit that will connect all the other pieces that we have. So there's nothing that is insignificant. She was smart, she was fun. We got along very well. She was the sister I didn't have at the time.
Thanks for joining us. You can reach us at 252-365-5593 or at truecrimexcess.com or truecrimexcess@gmail.com if you want to send us a note. This episode was brought to you by LabrottieCreations.com. That's LabrottieCreations.com. Check out the merchandise and specifically their fun Pop Pet art custom pieces made from photos of your very own pets. Use the promo code CRIMEXS, that's CRIMEXS, for 20% off a fun, brightly colored, happy piece of art of your own pet at their site, at BrodyCreations.com. Music in this episode was licensed for True Crime XS. The theme song was Indestructible by Noah Smith. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform or at TeePublic, Instagram, or Twitter. You can also join us on Patreon to fund future body exploration trips. But the best thing you can do for us is leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and share us with your friends. And we'll see you next time.
This is True Crime XS.
Well, we're sitting down going through all the Israel Keys stuff again. The idea is to give Israel Keys the least airtime. At least that's a goal that Mag has asked that we try to adhere to, and I tend to agree with her. I think she may give us her list of what she thinks happened. I know she's had some pretty significant decisions she's had to make in terms of how we present certain information, but I did want to kind of throw the ball in her court. And that gets complicated because I find all these new things that I want to include, but we have to, be specific of what's what. The truth is the FBI left out so many things that I don't know that I'm ever going to get to the bottom of what they were doing, but I found a couple of things that are just sitting there in the FBI files that make no sense. Dates are wrong, places are wrong, case files are wrong, and things are sealed that make they're sealed off from the public. Why is anything sealed off from the public related to Israel Keys at this point? That makes no sense to me. And the only thing I can think of is maybe they don't want other defense attorneys, if there's if it's a Keys possibility, but there's a real suspect, maybe they don't want people to have that. But it doesn't make sense. We found this one case in 2008. I keep staring at it. It's this rabbit hole that has sucked me back in, and they will not give up the information on it. And that just drives me to this point where I'm like, I gotta announce that. I've got to publicize that they've hidden this information, not just from me. There's another journalist that was involved in this. There's another journalist that asked very politely for this information several times between 2008 and now, and he can't even get it. So we're back into this rabbit hole that is the bottomless pit related to Israel Keys.
Birds are singing, what a beautiful day. Tonight I know the moon will rise in such a magical way. From dusk to dawn we'll go on and on, lighting fires and sing along. My oh my, when I see you get that look in your eyes, we ain't gonna sleep tonight, and that is alright. Tonight, we come alive, another step in time, feeling fine until the daylight. All the leaves are turning, what a beautiful day. Red, orange, and yellow, I say hello, won't you come out and play? If there's a heart, we'll get it started at the old-fashioned way. Oh, now what I see is you and me fit together so perfectly.